Welcome back to the Authentic Christian Podcast. I'm Aaron. This is Scott, and this is Matt. So you've met Matt on a few previous episodes, but I say Matt is the fourth man of the podcast. You know, in basketball, you have like the starting five, and you have your sixth man who basically helps out a lot and can be really important. Well, Matt is the fourth man of the podcast because, of course, we had Tucker, the first three. And then Matt is the one, anytime we say, hey, if you want a local Church of Christ, reach out to us. A lot of times Matt helps us find them. So we're excited to have him on here for a couple episodes. So, okay. Today's topic, how to reach your social media followers with the gospel. So obviously, as Christians, the goal, the obligation, I'd say command because it is a command, but it's also like, it's kind of like attendance when people say like, oh, I have to attend. It's like, well, I mean, if you want to go to heaven, first of all, yeah, you do. It's a command, right? But that sort of misses the point. Like it should be an opportunity. It's not just an obligation. It's like an opportunity to be encouraged, to encourage others, and to get closer to going to heaven, right? So evangelism obviously is the goal, the command, but also the opportunity for Christians, and that's to take the gospel to the whole world. So how do we accomplish that? All right, this is weird now. I've done however many episodes we've done this season with just me and Scott. So having someone in the back, it's like back to when Tucker was here. So, all right. So how do we do that? How do we take the gospel to the whole world? What are the different methods or overarching principles? What would you guys say?
I think the best thing is just take it to those that you're around. You know, try to get in Bible studies with people that you know. Love on people, be good to people, earn a Bible study. And we're all going to know people that nobody else is going to know that's in the church. And so try to reach those people. I think that's the most successful, the easiest thing, and best place to start. Yeah,
I think you're right. Like you said, reach people. Like there are people that you'll meet that no one else will. I mean, I've thought about that over the years. It's like, what if every single person quit their job and became a preacher? It's like, well, that would be great in one sense that you're preaching, but there's a lot of people you'll meet, if you're, I hate this term, but if you're a regular Christian, if you have like a full-time job, there are people, or a part-time job, whatever. My shoelace is caught on the bottom of this chair. I'm good. I'm free. There are people that you'll meet and you'll work with that I'll never meet. People that you'll come in contact with, James will come in contact with, Scott will come in contact with, that other people just never meet.
Yeah, absolutely. If you become full-time in church work, you have to make I think you have to make an even larger effort to reach people in your immediate sense. Like you personally, the personal work aspect, you don't have that pool of people at work or wherever you're at to interact with that are, in need of the gospel the same way that, like, for example, you and I, like, I'm not going to come evangelize to you, right? You're already a Christian. We're here at work, right? So it's a more of a challenge in a certain sense if you do decide to go in that life in a way. So we don't need everybody to be that, right? We all have to be serving our own functions and stuff like that in society, I guess you could say. But you most certainly need people everywhere in all walks of life going out evangelizing, taking the gospel with them as they go through whatever it is they do. Maybe you're a nurse. The people at the hospital need the gospel. Yeah. You don't need to drop everything and stop being a nurse and try to be a full-time whatever. I mean, the point I'm just trying to make is that everyone is needed to spread the gospel where they are currently as they're going, right?
Yeah. And
anyway, I don't know. I said that very well.
I think you said it really well.
Nailed it.
Yeah. I think too, you're referencing, if you work in a secular job, I say the word secular, I mean, whatever, it's like, sounds like a preacher thing probably, but if you're in the office and you're interacting with people, you're going to have a lot of people to reach out to. And then I think they're also like the opposite of that is guys who have like full-time located work, where I think there's probably a danger in that, where the danger would be, well, hey, I have to preach on Sunday twice and do a Bible class Wednesday night. So the danger for them is they're like holed up in their office all the time.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm referencing.
Yeah, they're holed up in their office, and the only people they interact with are Christians. And unfortunately, like sometimes those guys are, preachers are really knowledgeable in the word. It's like, I feel like if I was an elder, I'm not. And so one day maybe it's like you're the perfect parent till you become a parent. Kids. So maybe I'm the perfect elder until I become an elder. But I feel like if I was an elder, our preacher, I'd be like, look, you are required to be like, go study or work on your sermons from a coffee shop 1 or 2 days a week. Like here's some money from the budget because for me, I'd be like, hey, wait, maybe that's not in the budget. No, here's some money. So go eat your breakfast and drink coffee 2 days a week, or tea or something at a Panera or at a coffee shop, and interact with the people there. The reason I say coffee, the reason I say coffee shop is, where did Paul go in the book of Acts? Every time he went to a new city, he went where people were, but also where what kind of people?
Religious people.
Religious people. And man, all over the place when I travel and I walk into a coffee shop I drink tea more than coffee now. It's like, it's almost like, wait a minute, is this the Bible readers? Is this the Bible reader coffee shop? I feel like every coffee shop I go to, there's like 10 people that have a Bible. They might be reading it. It might be folded up next to their computer or whatever. But I feel like coffee shops are like the mecca for people reading their Bibles in the morning. So I feel like if I was an elder, I'd be like, thou shalt go to the coffee shop twice a week with this budget and just talk to people. Hey, what are you reading?
That's why it's good to have members that teach classes too, elders.
That's right.
Free up the preacher.
That's right. Free up the preacher. This is sort of, I don't know if it's off topic or on topic, but like, I don't think I've ever had this happen, but I imagine if I was a member of a congregation and a preacher got up on Sunday morning and he said, listen, I'm going to preach on this, but I'm going to be honest with you. I'm transparent. I've had so many Bible studies this week. It's been hard for me to like really go through this sermon. It's not going to be as polished as it normally is. Hope you'll forgive me, but I've been just slammed with Bible studies. I'd be like,
awesome.
Yes, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would be the goal, and someone at PTP, I did a 7 minutes of wisdom, or we were on one together, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we were on the one.
We were about marriage.
Marriage. That's right. We're the marriage experts. No, he had some
as far as you know.
Yeah. Yes, of course. Our wives aren't here. So, but no, I did one where somebody, it was in the EHA, it was the beginning, but he talked about how amazing it would be if instead of attendance on our boards, like attendance boards, instead of it was like attendance and offering, if it was like visitors, number of Bible studies, if we kept track of those metrics, as opposed to like, oh, there's 200 people here. That's great. And it's great that there's 200 Christians there because we need to, grow. But how cool would it be if you had the extra stat of like how many Bible studies or how many visitors have we invited?
Yeah, it would be a better stat. I think it would be a better stat.
I think so. It definitely would. It would gauge a different pulse.
Yeah, it would definitely gauge something different.
Yeah, completely agree. So yeah, okay. So Paul went where the people were. We should do the same thing. What are the different methods? I mean, some of this is probably review, but all right. Well, I mean, one method, I think, and some other guys, I don't know who organized it. I think you were one of the lead guys that organized like a nationwide.
Yeah, Brotherhood-wide door knocking day.
Day.
First Saturday in October every year, we go door knocking into our community. We'll have at least a couple hundred churches. I think the first year we had 500 churches or maybe 600 go door knock. And the idea is just go meet your community. It's not awesome. Trying to get through 500 doors. If you only get through 2 or 3 because you're talking, then cha-ching, that's the goal anyway. Spend time with people. So it's good. So that's coming up. Encourage your congregations to participate. And we've averaged for every 10 churches that knock, a conversion reported back.
That's great.
So if 10 churches sign up, there's a baptism that comes from that. And what's so cool is, this is to me the best part, several of those conversions had nothing to do with the person on the other side of the door. It had to do with this person. So we have several who have finally gotten the courage to talk to a coworker. And then a month later, they text us or email us, here's a picture of me baptizing my coworker. That happened to me in Rome. We had an okay day, but the guy I was knocking with, a new convert, felt, emboldened enough, encouraged enough. And he went and studied with a friend and called me that night. Like, hey, this guy wants to be baptized. I'm like, let's go. And he's like, well, he doesn't live here. And I only know Christians in Rome so far. But I knew Christians close to this guy, and they baptized him. And I check up on him every couple of months, and he's doing good. They text me the other day the directory picture of this guy.
Yeah.
So it changes us when we knock.
I agree.
We meet good people, but we also change ourselves, So door knocking, just anything that can put Christians and non-Christians in contact is always going to be a successful thing.
Yeah. And it's also encouraging because door knocking can be, I'm an extrovert for sure. You guys know me, but at the same time, there's still some things that the first time you start doing them can be intimidating if you've never done it. And door knocking's like one of those things. You say, I'm going to walk up to a stranger's door and try to talk to him. It's like, the first time you do it, it's like when I was in sales. I was in sales and consulting, whatever, for like 10 years before I came to GBN. And I remember in Morgantown, West Virginia, sitting in the house I was living in. It's my grandpa's house. He'd passed away, left to my uncle and my dad, and they let me live in it. And I was sitting in the kitchen table, looking at my phone, terrified to make my first cold call for sales. I remember I was sitting in the chair here, the windows here, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to call this guy. Like he's not going to want to talk to me. He's going to say no. And then finally I was like, you can do it. You can do it. So I get my motivation and call him, and I'm like, hey, my name's Aaron Gallagher with Gilson. I'd love to come and tell you. And he was like, not interested. And like he ended it. And I was like, wow.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad.
That wasn't that bad. And it was, you launch out and do it. And then from there, it got so much easier to then the point where it's like, it almost became a game. It's like,
yeah. Get to
like,
10. Get to 10 no's.
Like
before
10
one
no's,
yes.
or like, man, I'm going to be so nice to this guy. Like, I'm going to make it so hard for him to like turn me down, me coming to see him and stuff. But it's like that with anything that's hard in life, you know, that you're scared of doing it. The more you do it, the easier it gets. So like the door knocking day, I don't know when this will air. It might air actually after it. Oh, but if it does, that the door knocking day is supposed to be an encouragement. Plan for it next year. And also it's supposed to be an encouragement. Hey, this is the kind of thing you can do all the time. It doesn't have to be once a year. Once a year is better than 0 times a year, right? But use it as something that you do with people who are experienced. We talked about this in the last episode. If you're afraid to door knock, find somebody who's extrovert, who's good at it, who likes to do it, and say, hey, can I go with you? You know, and providentially, God can work. Who knows whose door you'll knock on?
Yeah,
you know?
just the main thing, I think it gets you soul focused, thinking about others, looking for opportunities.
Yes.
Which is the point.
Yeah, because you can be busy at a congregation and think that you're busy with the right things and be busy with the wrong things.
Yeah.
You know, somebody like, I'm so busy. Well, that's great. And I say that too. I'm so busy, but are you busy with the right things?
Yeah, I think that's the question.
Yeah.
I agree.
All right. So we can go where the people are in person. Coffee shops. We talked about door knocking, handing out flyers. You know, we keep cards, and we've said this before. We have cards, podcast cards, GBN cards. They're little business cards. Cards. And if you want some of those, we will send them to you for free. We don't charge you. You can offer. That's great. We'll say no thanks. They're free. And you just send us an email, authenticchristianpodcast@gmail.com, with your name and your mailing address. I will forward that to Laurie, who works up front. She will mail you some cards, and then you keep them in your wallet, your car. When you go to a gas station and you go to the grocery store, or you just keep them in your pocket, and you might meet somebody and you're like, you know what, that person, there's something about them. Give them a card, right? And that's a good start. You can mail material, right? Imagine, I don't know maybe it's this at PTP. Imagine like telling Paul that you could mail like the gospel invitation to like everybody in the world or like in his county. I think he would like lose his mind.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I don't have to walk to every door. I'll still do it, but I can mail this and it goes to everybody. Like use the things that we have, the opportunities we have.
Yeah.
Tell about some of the opportunities, like with House to House specifically.
Sure.
How you guys can, different things you can do if a congregation or a person, individual. You don't have to be a congregation. You may say, you know what, like I need to do something individually and I want to pay to send a issue of whatever to everyone in my neighborhood or my zip code. Like tell them about the different things House to House can do.
Yeah. So we produce a magazine every month called House to House, Hearttoheart, and we customize the front and back for a local congregation. And we can customize it, print it, and mail it for 37 cents. So I think a stamp is almost twice that.
Yeah.
So like if you wanted to mail a 1-page black and white letter to your neighbor, it would cost twice what House to House costs. And so it's color, it's teaching, it's customized. You advertise your Vacation Bible School, your clothing giveaway, your gospel meeting, your summer series. You give away a book. For one of our issues this year, the back page is advertising this podcast. You know, we do that every year, once or twice, because we love it. But yeah, so you can have your information go to your neighbors. You can saturate around your house, around your building. And our minimum is just 1,000 copies an issue. So you can reach about 1,000 homes for about $370. And then we do a new issue each month. We do some special issues. We have a new issue coming out next year that's going to be about trying to reach those who have been members of the church but left. Okay. And we're imploring them to come back.
Awesome.
So we're going to encourage churches, look, even if you don't normally print, help us reach those who have left us and try to convince them to come back. We also do something on a smaller scale, a new movers program.
Okay, talk about that too.
So church, just for $1 per address, every time somebody new moves into an area they selected, and you can select a small area or a huge area, we'll reach every home that somebody is moving into for the first time. And so you'll get their name and address, and we encourage you, go knock on the door, take them a little basket. Welcome to the area. This is a cool park, a mechanic you can trust. And if you have spiritual questions, here's a church we'd love to have you visit. And then we will follow your visit up with a mailing of House to House and a postcard. And it's just $1 per address. And you can put limits on it. You want to reach 5 a month, you can probably go visit 5. And even if you're the guy at church or the girl at church who can't get any help, and we know some people like that, this is a small enough thing. You could go visit 5 people. Yeah. You know, be wise and take someone, but you know what I mean? And if your church can't afford to do it, or you can't afford to do it, if you'll give us an address, we'll add them to the mailing list. And I try to find a church that's already doing it in their area and put them on that church's mailing list. Yeah. You know? So there are a lot of opportunities to reach people in the mail.
When I moved in 2018 to South Haven, I moved in across, well, it doesn't matter. I won't give address, but I don't live there anymore. So, but when I moved in, I remember within the first day or two, I actually got a someone knocked on my door and gave me a care package, and they were from a Baptist church. And I talked to the lady, and she invited me to church, and I said, thank you so much. I said, I have a church, and we had a nice little conversation. But I remember thinking like, man, that was kind. And, they were putting forth effort. And it's kind of like when we talk about Mormons, like, their doctrines is all over the place, but they're motivated.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people say stuff. I mean, just specifically, I've heard people say, and first of all, I disagree with this, but people said, house to house is expensive. And it's like, really?
That's not that bad. $370 for 1,000 people.
Okay. Imagine this scenario.
Not at all.
Imagine this scenario. Imagine that someone says, well, why don't you do this? What are you doing to reach your local community? And you're like, well, I mean, we might talk. I mean, is there an effort? Are you putting forth effort? And then imagine this. Imagine you're in like your church's meeting, whether it's a men's meeting, elders, deacons, preachers meeting, and someone's like, hey, what about house to house, heart to heart? And someone's like, yeah, it's too expensive. Now imagine the Lord teleports and the Lord's sitting there at the head of the table. And you're like, and Jesus is like, hey, what are you guys doing to reach your local community? And you're like, Lord, house to house, heart to heart's too expensive. I'm not saying this is not like pitch for house to house. It's just do something.
Well, I appreciate it.
And I think house to house is I think it's awesome, and it's not
really
only
good service.
It's not only the service you guys do, but the fact that sometimes I feel guilty. I mean, I'm just being honest with how much work, like we get people all over just in the last couple of days, people from different states that I won't mention, but the state didn't mention, but like Texas. Hey, I need a church in Texas. And Matt's like, Matt, where do you know here? This person. Hey, this person, I got an email from Mel. He'll know who he is. He reached out. We said, hey, there's a lady in your community that wants to visit your church and study. They want to be baptized as a guy. And he's like, that's great. The last person you sent to me, we baptized him. Mm-hmm. So like, it's not just the service. It's also the fact that we know that you all live it at house to house. And so, I mean, imagine the Lord sitting there and you're like, that's too expensive. And he's like, oh, how much was it? And you're like, $370 for 1,000 people. It's like, oh, really? How much money did you spend eating out last month?
Yeah.
And I'm guilty of it as anybody, but
that'd be easy.
What is the priority?
Last month, if that's a regular habit, that'd be easy.
Yeah. And I guess what I'm getting at is, what are we really focused on? Like, what are we putting our money? If we say, well, our money is really the Lord's. How much do we spend on him? Or we just say that because it sounds good. So what are you doing to reach your local community individually? If you say, well, my congregation doesn't do it yourself. With this is the sort of thing where, I don't know.
That'd be a personal goal in life to be able to afford to do 1,000 people a month by yourself.
Yes.
That'd be
$370. I mean, really?
It's feasible. We often have bills that large, don't we?
Or even splitting it with a few families.
Yeah, get a couple families and split it.
Yeah, and look, I'm not suggesting it has to be that. I don't mean to be too hardcore about it, but I'm just saying, like, that would be kind of cool
I agree.
The other thing that we hear, other than the prices, like it doesn't work. But I think we hear that about door knocking. We hear that about this podcast. We hear that about friendship evangelism, and then what we're going to get to today too. But I think the thing is, none of these things is the cure all. But each of them can reach people in different ways. It's a tool in your tool bag.
Yeah.
The only thing that doesn't work is not doing anything.
That's right.
All these things work if you work them, and I'm sure you guys are this way. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of conversion stories from the mailings, from door knocking with faces, emails, and we still check up on them, and a lot of those are faithful. So the only thing that doesn't work is not working.
Yeah. And like you said, this is what 1 Corinthians 3:5 says. Who then is Paul and who is Apollos? Who's house to house in the GBN, the podcast? Ministers to whom you believed, as the Lord gave to each one. I planted, Paul writing, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. So like somebody had to plant and somebody had to water, but God gives the increase. And so the person that planted, like when Paul says, I planted, I mean, maybe there were no conversions in that particular instance he's speaking to. Apollos watered. Like there's times where you plant seeds, you have Bible studies, you send out flyers, and you might not have any response. But that doesn't mean it wasn't a good effort. That doesn't mean it didn't work. Sometimes people think, well, I had a study with somebody and they didn't repent and weren't baptized immediately. It was a failure. No, it wasn't. Like your job is to preach and let God will get the increase. So I still remember, I think I've told you this story, and I may have told it on the podcast, but I probably didn't tell the whole story on the podcast. All right. I won't say where this was, but there was some Mormon missionaries that I met, and they were riding their bikes on the highway, and I went up to the next intersection. I pulled over and I waved them over because they were driving their bikes, and I'm like, you're going to get hit. So they came over, and I was like, what are you guys doing? And they were like, well, we're heading back to our apartment where we live. And I was like, do you guys want to have a Bible study with somebody that won't scream at you? And they were like, that'd be nice. And I'm like, okay, meet me at Tropical Smoothie Cafe. And I knew from Mormon missionaries before that a lot of times when they're on their missions, they have to pay for their own food. The ones in North Carolina that I used to meet with said they were only allowed to talk to their parents on like Christmas and like Mother's Day. Yeah, unless that's changed, right? That's what they told me. I had 2 Mormon missionaries. I know their last names, and they were alphabetically right next to each other, but I won't say them. But they told me they're only allowed to talk to their parents Mother's Day and Christmas, and they're paying for their own stuff while they're on their mission. So, because I read a blog actually written by a Mormon mom once, I was trying to how to reach Mormons better. So anyway, they told me that. So I take that information, which they told me North Carolina was true. So like they would let my wife make them like a thing of pasta and like a big metal container and take it to them so that they could reheat it and eat for, a couple of days, whatever. So, because they don't have home cooked meals hardly, unless they're Mormon people do. Anyway, so back to the story here. This is longer than I intended. Sorry. We would go to Tropical Smoothie Cafe and we would talk to them. And I started asking them. And one of the first questions said, what do you guys know about the Church of Christ? And I said, not the Church of Christ of Latter-day Saints, but the Church of Christ of the New Testament saints. And of course, Latter-day, the last days, we'll get that, Christian age. But anyway, I said, what do you know about them? And you know what they said? They said the only thing that they knew about the Church of Christ, no joke, this is a true story, is that only thing they knew about it was because they got house to house in their apartment mailbox. Cool. So they stayed in an apartment complex, had never met anybody from the Churches of Christ, and the only thing that they knew was that they get this house to house article, like this magazine, in their mailbox, and they've read it. And I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And I mean, I get that was Olive Branch. Mm-hmm. It was in Olive Branch.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that was Olive Branch Church of Christ.
Yeah.
Who was sending out house to house, because that's where they were. So
it's so cool. All these things, like sometimes the ground is too hard to even plant a seed in. You've got to till it up. So each of these things each of us does, I hope, makes it easier for the person that comes behind us.
That's right.
And you see that in Samaria too. When they first go through, they reject Jesus, and James and John say, bring down thunder on them. And Jesus is like, no, that's not why I came. And then later John is going to write John 3:17. Jesus didn't come into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world.
Yeah.
But watch the slow progression of Samaria, the woman at the well.
Yeah.
And then she tells people. And they believe it first because of her, but then because of who Jesus is. And then you get to the book of Acts, and there's a lot of Samaritans that become Christians.
Yeah.
But that started with, no, don't destroy them. One woman. So you have to till up the ground, plant the seed, water it. And so you can't expect a harvest of the Samaritans in Acts without the work that it took in the earlier stages to get there. So that's the goal.
It's like Mark. Where is it? The parable of the mustard seed. I know it's in the first few chapters of Mark. I think it's only in Mark. Shouldn't do this. Oh, here it is. Mark 4:26. And he said, the kingdom of God is as if a man should scatter seed on the ground, and he should sleep by night and rise by day, and the seed would sprout and grow, and he himself does not know how. For the earth yields crop by itself, first the blade, then the head, then after that the full grain in the head. But when the grain ripens, immediately he puts in the sickle, because the harvest has come. So it's kind of like if you ever planted a garden, and I'm fairly impatient. Scott, you're going to say, no, you're not.
Not you. Oh, you.
No, I'm just kidding. Scott's honest. He wouldn't. I can be very impatient sometimes. So I remember, planting a garden, you plant seed. And this is basically like you plant a seed and you don't know how, but it grows. It's kind of like, I feel like with the gospel, you plant the seed, Luke 8:11, seed's the word of God, different parable, but you plant it. And then sometimes you just like walk away and it grows, and you come back later and you're like, whoa, what, when did you obey the gospel? And you're like a deacon now. And you have all these things that the word of God will work. You just have to plant it,
Yeah.
All right. So we talked long enough that my computer went to sleep. So we've talked about how to take the gospel to people in person for 24 minutes. Let's talk about, what about social media? Social media is, I believe, the title of this episode, how to reach your social media followers with the gospel. Maybe we'll change
get around
it.
to that then.
Yeah. We'll change it to, how do you reach followers with the gospel, or people with the gospel? Okay. Social media. So social media is relatively new. I mean, in some sense, it's just a new type of marketplace, So it's like Ecclesiastes 1:9 and 10. Is there anything really that can be said, see, this is new? It's already been in ancient times before us. Nothing's new under the sun, right? So in a sense, they didn't have cell phones, but they still have means of communication. So why should we use it? Why should we use social media? Or should we just say, well, it's the devil. Social media is the devil.
That's where people are.
Yeah.
And we're trying to reach people with the gospel. And so as long as people are there, there's an opportunity to do so, and do so in a biblical or moral way, then you should do it.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, more or less, that's it. Why should you try to reach people at the grocery store? Why should you try to go door knocking? Why shouldn't you try to reach the people that are on social media? They're available to you. You can do something.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to do everything, but you can do something. If you have the account, you can start figuring out different ways that you can reach those people.
And most of them are free too. I mean,
Yeah.
That's, you'd say, well, I don't have the money to do this. Well, you got the money for social media. I mean, if you got a phone, which most of you probably do, you can literally like go on Facebook and go live and talk about the Bible. You don't even have to have it memorized. You can like read your notes. I mean, I could literally just put my phone right here and go live and just go through my notes, you know?
Yeah.
So it really makes it easy to reach people. And you think about door knocking, your goal is to get into a conversation and they're, oh, come on in, please come into my house. You're like, wow, this is great. I mean, if you're making content on social media, what in essence are they doing? Like they're probably sitting on their couch watching you, you know, it's a little bit different than actual in-person conversation, you know, but.
Yeah. And some people I think I want to preach, or I want to have this official thing. Just start where you are with what you've got. You for sure on your friends list or followers list, have somebody who's not a Christian, or somebody who's thinking about leaving, or somebody who has questions. And so just speak to some of those things. You've got an attentive audience, and you may not get 1,000 likes or 100 or 10, but almost guaranteed somebody is going to watch that. You know? And then you just get better and better as you go, more and more comfortable, reach more people. And that's what it's about. Use what you've got in front of you. Yeah.
I mean, think about if you put a video up on Facebook, and look, it could be a bad video, be bad quality. You could be not a charismatic speaker. You'll probably still get what? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, maybe 100 views. I mean, like an auditorium full of 100 people is a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, right. I mean, people are like, well, my video didn't go viral. I only reached 300 people. It's like, you know, it's a giant auditorium full of people that you just got to, in our context, preach the gospel to, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think when you're reaching out to social media followers too, a lot of people don't want to talk about sin, but it's sort of essential because when's the last time you looked for your car keys? Then you didn't know they were lost. Like you need to know something's lost before you know it needs to be found. And so most people don't realize they're lost. And so we need to talk about sin. And that's almost like a 4-letter word anymore. I mean, it's a 3-letter word, but it's like a word people don't want to talk about.
Yeah. They don't want to use it.
Yeah. Cause we have a culture that's like, you better not offend somebody.
Yeah. It's like,
be careful you don't upset them.
But we don't want to call it sin.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the way it goes.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Right.
What are some scriptures? So if we're going to say we should talk about sin, how people are lost, and Romans 3:23, all have sinned and fall short. What are some other passages that talk about sin and why it's important to know about it?
Romans 6:23. Yeah, that's what I think of when I think of Romans 3:23 because they match up so good. The wages of sin is death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
2 Corinthians 5:10-11, right? We all are going to appear before that judgment seat of Christ. Give that answer for the things done in the body.
Yeah. According to what he's done, good or bad. I mean, like, I know most of the time it's easy for us to forget that, like, hey, I don't have to stand before the judgment seat right now. But, like, just listen to that verse. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may receive the things done in the body according to what he has done, whether good or bad. And I need that to be read slowly to myself sometimes too.
What does he call that in verse 11?
Knowing, therefore, the terror of the Lord.
That's the terror of the Lord, judgment day.
We persuade men.
That's it, man.
Yeah. That's why,
that's why we got to evangelize, because God is going to judge us.
That's right. When you see your neighbor, know that your neighbor, one day he's going to stand before the judgment seat of God. The terror of the Lord, if he's not made right with God, not had sins forgiven. So, like, anytime you look at somebody, remember, like, they, including you, we're all going to stand one day before the judgment seat of Christ and have to answer for all the things that we did.
Well, we're going to be asked to.
I stood before a human judge.
The question is going to be whether or not we have Christ there,
that's
as our
right.
Savior or not.
As your attorney.
I'd rather have him give the answer for me.
Yeah.
Just to be honest. But that's going to happen one way or another. You'll have him there or you won't. More or less.
That tells a story once about I had to stand before a human judge once. So I had an expired registration once. I had it twice, actually. And the first time I went in super early, 7 a.m., got there early, my new paperwork, and I got in the line. The lady like stamped it and I just left. I didn't even have to go in to the courtroom because I got there so early. I was like, man, this is easy. So I don't know, a year or two later, I got expired registration again. I was lazy. I was in my 20s. And so I'm like, oh man, this is cake, So I didn't go in at 7. I rolled in at like 8:45 and I get there and the window is in Raleigh, North Carolina. The window's closed. And I was like, so I was asking around and I saw this officer. I'm like, hey, where do I? He's like, you got to go into the courtroom. I was like, oh boy. So I walked in and I mean, what was I there for? An expired registration. Like that's in the whole scheme of things, not a big deal. And so I literally had to go up to the front. There was the judge was there and there was someone sitting over here. I had to walk up to them. And I was like, hi, I have expired registration. They're like, take a seat. And I was like, oh. like and it's for an expired registration, right? So I sat there and I'm like, oh man, is the judge going to talk to me? Like, what's he going to say? And so finally the judge calls my name, and I like stand up, and he said to the guy, did he turn in his updated paperwork? And the guy's like, yes, sir, he did. And he's like, okay, you're good to go. And I was like, thank you. And I'm like, I was terrified. And it's like, this is a human judge over an expired registration. Not a big deal, man.
Yeah.
In the whole scheme of things. But when you had to stand before him, I mean, my dad's an attorney. It's not like I'm not foreign to the law process. And I know what's the worst they're going to do? I mean, give you a fine. But still, you stand before a judge and that he has the authority. All of a sudden, it gets real. And I just can't imagine what that feeling would be like if you stand before the creator of the universe and he says, I don't know what he's going to say, but like, your sin, this is a list of sins, right? I don't know how it's going to work, but I assume if you have the blood of Christ covering you, you're going to, I don't know if they'll call your name and you stand up, and then Jesus will step forward. Lord, he's got my dad, he's got my blood, And I know Jesus is the one doing the judging, right? John 12:48, but how it's going to work. But Jesus is like, you're covered in my blood. Enter into the joy of my Lord.
Right, right. I don't know exactly how it's going to in the micro play out.
Yes,
but at the end of the day, you're going to be there, and there's going to need to be an answer.
Yes.
I think I would rather be in a position where I have done what Jesus has asked me to do.
Said, I know I'm not perfect. I know I messed up a lot.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. But you said if I confess my sins, you'll forgive me. Of course, I won't say that. I know that.
Yeah, I mean, you get it. That's where I want to be
too. Because now I think of that scene and I'm comforted by it.
Yeah.
But I remember even as a Christian, when I wasn't necessarily living like it, or I didn't understand some of these things fully, that was a terrifying thing to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank God now it's comforting.
I mean, it's
That's
the
right.
terror of the Lord.
Perfect love
right?
casts out fear.
And it's because of that he says we persuade men. But
Yeah.
he says, but we are well known to God.
That's right.
And I also trust are well known in your consciences,
Mhm.
right? So I mean, it is terrifying, and you've got to make sure that you're reading the scriptures, doing like the Bereans, searching them daily to see if these things be true, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
All the things we say, all the things you hear on any other thing, any other platform, any other preacher, anything you even read, go and search it. Make sure that you're right with the Lord on that day.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what makes this so important, because I think most people feel like they're good.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, maybe they are, but some surely aren't
Yeah.
walking around thinking they are. And if they don't know that they're lost, they can't know that they need to be saved.
That's
why
the
it's an
many will
important
say to me
discussion.
that day, Lord, Lord, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we can go back to that. I mean, that's it. There's a lot of people that
And
are just kind of
That verse too,
comfortable.
read Matthew 7:21.
right.
Because that verse, Matthew 7:21, many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, did we not do all these religious things? There's a lot of people today that say, no, I'm good. I mean, I believe in God. And yet they don't do religious things. But those people in there, they believe, read Matthew 7:21. Listen to the things they were doing.
Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness.
Yeah. So if those people in there are saying they did those three different types of religious things, religious activities, and God says, I didn't know you. Like, what about people? It's like arguing from the greater to the lesser. If God said to people who did religious things, I don't know you.
Yeah.
What would make you think if you're not doing religious things? And I get tired of people saying, oh, relationship with
That's
Jesus
a
is
fair
not
point.
religion. It's a relationship. Well, James 1:26 and 27, the Bible calls Christianity a religion. Okay.
Yeah. And Matthew 7:21, where we just read, he finishes with saying that they are lawless. What does that mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. They have failed to follow the law. They have not kept it. They have not sought at all to please the Lord in any way.
Yeah.
They disregarded the things that he told them to do, substituted what they wanted to do, and now they're appealing to him on the day of judgment saying, but Lord.
Yeah.
Well, you practiced lawlessness.
Yeah.
You didn't obey me. You didn't follow me.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying to them.
That's right.
Anyway.
No, you're right. So people are lost. What's the cure?
The gospel.
Yeah.
The
Jesus,
gospel.
that's it.
Yes.
Rome-
Jesus, his blood.
That's right. Romans 1:16, I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God. What? The gospel of Christ. The power of God to salvation for everyone who believes, for the Jew first, and also for the Greek.
That's right.
The gospel.
I think it helps keep us humble too. As we're sharing this, we're not sharing this as someone who's got it all figured out or
No.
came up with this on our own. We're sharing it as
I got a
people
lot of
who
problems.
have had a lot of problems, still
That's
have
right.
problems, and we're only saved because of Jesus. And so I think it helps to remember that as we share these things, because we don't want to set anybody off on a course where they're going to just open up and scream at their followers. That would be a mistake. To never get around to sin would be one side of the mistake, and to just get on there like you know it all, yelling at people. So I think you see the different Bible writers, Peter and Stephen, they walk through the Old Testament. But then you see Paul in these Gentile settings. He doesn't. Why? Well, different audience. Yeah. So we have to know most of our audience on social media isn't going to say thank you when we get on there if we do this in the wrong attitude. Yeah. So we have to maybe work up to it, have to kind of find our voice, get some people listening, engage, and do it in a loving way. I wouldn't necessarily start with sin, but eventually you have to get people to understand they're lost or they can't be saved. Yeah. So that's just a point of wisdom maybe that'll help.
Yeah. I think like with Romans 1:20 through like 27, I guess all the way through 32, but Romans 1:20 talks about the creation, the creator. That sort of seems like a good, hey, this is God. You're supposed to worship him. But instead, people don't do that. They worship themselves, you know. But
man, that'd be a great place to start.
Yeah, that's just what comes to mind for me. All right, so we're supposed to reach the lost with the gospel. We're supposed to talk about sin. What if you were to talk about sin and talk about a godly life and then not live it?
You do more harm than good.
Yeah, I think so. You can't really you can't reach people with the gospel if they look at you and they know you and they think it hasn't changed you.
I think you can look at what happened. I mean, more or less what we're talking about is what the Pharisees, the Sadducees, or other groups have done. And not just them. You can look into the past, a lot of hypocritical groups, and see what happens, you know? Yeah. When you do that, what it does towards not only, I mean, number one, you're going to compromise your own soul. Number two, if you're hypocritical in that way, you're going to compromise your reputation and the reputation of the congregation you might be with, or other things like that. There's the influence that goes along with that as well, right? So the example of Christian conduct.
Yeah, and we're going to do another episode about protecting and molding your own mind that we'll probably do after this one, so it'll be the week after. But you know, we got to be careful as Christians. That doesn't mean, it's like you said, everyone like in there probably has a past, right? There's a lot of people who become Christians, or even maybe they're Christians now, but they are faithful now, but they were unfaithful. And either way, like there's going to be stuff in your past, very likely, that you've done that has brought reproach to Christ. But all you can do is repent, ask for forgiveness, pray, reach out to those people if you have that opportunity, and then start living a good life. And so you can turn that around. I mean, I think, you know, if I've done something wrong 10 years ago and someone were to see my Facebook now and see that consistently I'm trying to do, you know, my best, I think they would understand, oh, there's been a change from 10 years ago.
Yeah, it was a big effort, like when I first became a Christian, to try to make sure everyone understood what I was doing, that there was going to be this change to the way I behaved myself, spoke, and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think with regards to social media, if we're trying to reach people who follow our social media, we need to make sure that our social media reflects Christian character too. I mean, the things we post, the things we like, the people we follow, because social media really is a window into your heart. I mean, it shows what you represent. What does your social media presence say about your Christian life? Are you a good example or not? You know, if you knew that the preacher on Sunday was going to pull up your Instagram feed or go through your snaps, right? Like, would you be like, yeah, sure, go for it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like if you just share a random article from wherever, most people are going to assume that you just agree with that article.
Sure.
And if you go and you write something about it or whatever, that may be different. Give some commentary like, I disagree with this article because it says this and it's ungodly and we shouldn't support that as Christians. That's different.
Yeah.
But just blindly just sharing whatever things, like, you know, there may be a good part of something, but you have to consider as well, you know, the overall message of that brand, of that target article, or whatever it's trying to accomplish. I'm not trying to be too specific because it could be video, it could be written, it could be whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that stuff matters.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, there's times where I'll get on social media and I'll see like, you know, your feed, a picture pops up and I'm like, that's not modest. And then it's like, so-and-so's liked it. I'm like, come on, you know, whether it's just a Christian man or a married Christian man, like, come on, you know, like what you do on social media, other people see it, you know, the conversations you have on your wall with someone, other people see it. So just be careful that you're not going to try to reach out, and you may be genuine and you may be reaching out and trying to teach the gospel to somebody, and they'll probably never say this to you, but they may be like, man, why you want to study gospel with me when I see the photos you like all the time, or the people that you follow, or the music, the page you like. I like this page, you know? So anyway, all right. What do you think, Matt?
Well, I got a lot of thoughts.
Unleash them.
I was just thinking like with this, I think this is a lot of information. It could seem like, wow, that's a lot to think of, and that's hard.
Yeah.
So we're not trying to make it harder than it is. It's just this: be consistent, think about things. You know, some people get on there and they fire off. It's good to get things off your chest, but that's a phone call or at a coffee shop with someone who's trusted and can handle it. It's not social media. And so we just need to be careful about that. Doesn't have to be this hard, but you also want to be consistent. Like I know we may talk about later, preaching the whole counsel of God, but you know, we all know people on social media, the message they speak is good, but that's all they focus on, to the neglect of other things. So there are things that you can do to show it's who you are. And I do worry about that line of like, does it look like I'm bragging? But you have to know, you know, what's the reason I'm posting that I'll be speaking here? What's the reason I'm posting? Like, you don't want to help someone and then take a picture with them to put it on social media, right? But you also want to let people know that you are there to help. So how can you do that? So some practical things. What if you said around the holidays, and I know not everyone could do this, but for those that could, if you're in town and you're alone on Thanksgiving and you don't want to be, come to our house.
Yeah.
Now, when the person gets there, you don't have to blow them up and put it on. Look at the good thing I did.
Post it on.
But if you're just consistent and genuine and you're sharing invitations into your life like that, because the verse you mentioned in James, pure religion, the good stuff, the pure stuff is helping the widows and the orphans, helping those that can't help themselves. And even in like Amos, when God is getting on to the people, one of the reasons is they're not helping those who can't help themselves.
Yeah.
In the Old Testament law, you know, harvest your grain, but leave some. Don't necessarily go deliver it and do all the work, but leave some for other people. So God has always cared about helping the less fortunate. So if we only harp on matters of what we might call doctrine, even though that's doctrine too, to the neglect of actually caring about people, the world picks up on that.
Yeah.
So it's a balance, you know what I mean? You do have to get around to those weightier things, what's distinct about the New Testament church and the plan of salvation.
Yeah.
But also let me just be a consistent person who cares. And there's no shortcut to that. But you don't have to make it hard. Just be good, and social media can be part of that.
That's right. I think about the one thing, I've probably talked about this before. Maybe I talked about it when we did this at PTP, but whenever you see these videos on social media where it's like, I'm going to do a good deed today, and like walk up to this person in the grocery store and they look kind of raggedy and they're like, hey, you look really raggedy. You look like you're having a bad day. You know what I do? I have $1,000 in a briefcase for you. Would you like it? And the person's like, oh, wow, thanks. And you're like, what a sweet guy. Until you remember what
a jerk.
His buddy's got a camera, like filming the whole thing. Like, hey, make sure this person looks really raggedy. Let's go give them money. And then they monetize it and make like way more money. It's like, I almost feel like that's the Pharisees in the Bible that go stand on the street corner. Like, don't be like the Pharisees when you pray, who go to the corner of the streets and say, dear Lord, thank you that I'm not like this publican. You know, it's like, no.
More or less.
Yeah. It's like it's showy religion to be seen of men, right? Yeah. That doesn't mean you shouldn't pray publicly, right? But it shouldn't be a show. And like you said, at times, you'll be the only one that knows that. And if you see someone's Facebook, there are times, if I'm honest, I'll see a post and I'll be like, what was the real goal of that post? And then I'm like, hey, give them the benefit of the doubt. Leave it up to them, you know. But you're right. At the same time, you don't want to never talk about anything good that you're doing, because let your light shine before men.
Yeah, like,
so they see your good works and glorify
I'll give you an
God
example.
in heaven.
Like, if you want to take a picture with somebody that you helped, make sure that like you're running the soup kitchen and they're in front of it and they want to do it, and you're inviting more people to come and eat that need help. Yeah. You know, like it needs to be actually to the point of trying to do good, and not just look at how awesome I am. I can give people $1,000. Look at that smile. That's great. Like you're saying, no, absolutely, man.
Yeah,
that's what it is. That is what it is.
Yeah.
What you just said, the Pharisees. And that's a great way to put it. I don't know why, but somehow or another, it's almost like another twist of the prosperity gospel or something. Like they're going to go and do good things, and look how rich we get from doing it.
Yeah,
you know, I mean. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry. I won't rant on that too long, but yeah, I mean, absolutely.
You know, everywhere I go, people tell me that whenever they talk about the podcast, they do tell me they like Scott rants. Yeah. Because whenever you will rant, and you normally don't rant that long, you rant like for a short time, and then you're like, sorry about ranting. And I'm like, no, dude, people.
Well, I just get worked up.
Well, it's not a rant.
You just, I'm like, it's not that important.
You get emotional about it. I mean, it's good. Yeah. Like you should. You're passionate.
We like it. So you'll know.
We do.
We'll chant you on next time. Scott,
that's it. Scott.
We can make it a don't.
Oh man.
We can make a sound effect for it. So we can use the social media for good. You don't have to be hermits. We're not trying to scare. Like I'm not trying to scare you. You know, whenever I say, hey, look, the Bible says we can blaspheme God and his doctrine and his church by the way that we live, our example, the things we say. I'm not trying to scare you off of social media or myself to say, hey, you should be a hermit. Like just go live in a cave somewhere, right?
No, just trying to encourage you to live righteously.
That's right. That's right. You know, John 15, 17 through John 17:15-17 says, Jesus, I do not pray you take them out of the world, but that you should keep them from the evil one.
Yeah.
They are not of the world, just as I'm not of the world. Sanctify them by your truth. Set them apart by your truth. Your word is truth. So we don't need to be taken out of the world. We need to be in the world, but we need to be different. We need to be set apart. How do you do that? By God's word, by his truth.
Absolutely.
And then you're in a dark place, but you're a light, and you can reach people with the gospel. So how you can use social media for good? Post engaging stuff, photos, Bible studies, videos, could be lessons, could be devotionals, could be a conversation. I love that I see whenever guys say like, hey, we're starting our own podcast. I'm like, that's awesome, man. Like, it doesn't have to be fancy. You can just get on Zoom. Like, I watched one, my buddy Alex, he started one with another buddy of his. I forget his name. Maybe, I don't know him well, in Texas. They were just talking through the Gospel of John. Like, it was awesome. I mean, I watched it. I was like, I enjoy this, So if you have a phone or a computer and you got social media, you can make videos, whether it's Zoom or, FaceTime, and you screen record. Like, you can do a lot of things and you'll reach people.
Yep. You can make videos. You can write articles. You can get together with your friends and make the videos a little fancier if you want to do something together.
Yeah.
You can put advertising money behind it yourself if you want to learn how to do it. Spend $10. Make something crafted and to a point, and then figure out who that's best for. And if you want to, just spend $10 on that yourself.
Yeah.
Try it out. Definitely. You can use social media in every kind of way to get all kinds of different media and contact out there. And then you can use it as a funnel to kind of push people to make contact and get sit-down studies as well. That's really the main goal. You want to have the study.
That's right.
So, when we talk about how we can use social media for good, just remember the main point is we're trying to get a conversation.
That's right.
Right?
It's a funnel.
On there can be okay. It's better if you can get it to where they'll meet somewhere locally. If you're reaching out to people in your community, like you can set up things, and I only want to reach 25 miles around, kind of like HouseetoHouse does with stuff, but digitally, right?
Yeah.
Same deal, but digitally. Do that.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and a lot of our congregations have cool stuff throughout the year. We have a food pantry. We have Vacation Bible School, or we have Thursday morning men's class. And so sometimes I'll see members don't post about any of that ever. And I'm like, we're mailing it out on House to House, and we made a social media graphic, but what good is that? Because the majority of people that like our page are us.
Yeah.
Now, people in the community do and see it and come, but if each of us would just share that, that's instant sharing of the gospel in a way. An invitation.
Let's give, we're not telling you what to do. It drives me crazy when, this is a personal pet peeve. I'm going to say it.
Get it off your chest. Let us know.
Whenever, preachers make their congregation to repeat after me, say this. Sorry, that's just me. I don't like it.
No. Yeah.
Anyway, but something you could do if you choose to do, because you're an adult and you have free will, and I'm not your boss. If just what Matt said, okay, your social media. Well, what do I post on social media? Take the sermon that your preacher preached, if you think it was a good sermon, or worship service, and post it and say, hey, we'd love to have you this Sunday. Yeah. Or, hey, our church is having a work day. You might be surprised. If you say, hey, our church is having a work day, we're not going to invite anybody else to come mow grass. Well, maybe if you have food afterwards, maybe they want to come mow the grass, or, hey, if you come to our work day, help us mow grass, we'll buy you pizza after or something. Anything your church is doing, just take a stab at it. Just try, post it on your social media, text your buddies. Hey, we're having a men's Bible study. Would you interested in coming?
Yeah. And
because the worst thing they can say is what?
No.
And then they wouldn't be there, as if they won't be there if you don't tell them about it.
Yeah. If you're just talking about the content, and you don't know how to start making content, just go use some articles from House to House or Christian Courier or something like that.
Yeah, and on our website,
share things that already exist, and then learn how to get into it yourself and start doing it too.
Our GBN's website, if you go to gbntv.org and you go to at the top, watch on demand, every single one of our videos, you can click the down arrow and download it. And we encourage people, hey, download it, re-upload it on your church's. If you say, well, I want to post videos on our church's website, but we don't have a studio. That's why we're trying to make stuff. One reason is so, hey, you can do that. You can take it. You can take articles, you can take different things like that. Use the resources that are out there. I'm sure there are some guys out there, but I can't think of many that at least are within the group that we're close with, AP, WVBS, none of them are don't share our videos with the lost. They're yeah, please share it. That's why we're making it,
Yeah.
So you can make your own stuff.
Anybody that feels that way.
No.
Yeah, we're giving them away.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
And you can find, even if it's a topic, you could have June is the Book of John month, and share lessons from good people, Hiram Kemp or World Video Bible School, share other things. And you said share your preachers. I like that. What if you put a quote here's something impactful that he said at this minute
Yeah.
mark,
Yeah.
and then here's the whole sermon.
That's a
'cause
good
you can
idea.
Just pull people in, So I think just blindly sharing video can kind of overwhelm people
Yeah.
and they tune out.
That's a good
But
point.
if you're selective and you put quotes and some things like that, I think it can be more engaging. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but just a little time and thought
That's
into
good.
it.
I like that.
And even we're talking about making it easy. Just go through and like good pages from the Brotherhood and where deep Bible study takes place. One of my elders recently baptized a woman because he knew her in the past, and she just decided she wanted to be a Bible student. She Googled free online Bible school. World Video Bible School came up. So she was going through Genesis, and she looked at their Facebook page, one friend who had liked the page, this elder in my congregation.
Really?
And because of that, she messaged him. They engaged in a study. When she got to Exodus 20 about covenants and the 10 Commandments, she reached out. They studied. They eventually met up, talked about the new covenant, and then she was baptized. And me and my family we'd gone into a Mexican restaurant, and he called me and was like, hey, do you want to come to a baptism? And they were bringing the chips and salsa. And we said, oh, we'll be back. And we left and we went. And we did come back.
Yeah.
And it was a good day at the Mexican restaurant. But before that, we saw the baptism because he liked it. That's it.
Yeah.
So don't make this too hard. Again, just like it, and you never know what can happen. Sometimes I think we don't have results. We're not giving God anything to work with. Just give him your little loaves and fishes. He's going to do the heavy lifting anyway. Don't put so much pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
Or give yourself so much credit. Just do some things and God can bless that activity.
And how can he work providentially? I mean, it's like you have a list. I mean, I have a list of things that hopefully I'll be able to remember in my perfect resurrected figure in heaven, right? But I think about things I want to be like, all right, was this you, Lord? Like, I'm pretty sure this was you, but I can't know if this is your providence or not. Like, that's one of those scenarios where it's like, all right, the one person that likes what she's looking at that she found through the internet is this elder who then studies. It's like, hey, it sounds to me like providence, but all we can say is what Paul said in Philemon. Who knows? Or Mordecai, perhaps.
Yeah, it's crazy because it's like when he hit like
Paul said perhaps, and Mordecai and
ago,
Esther said, who knows?
Right, that's true.
Clear that
when he hit like 7 years ago or whatever, God fired that arrow that was going to be the conversion. Or
Man,
whatever,
I'm telling you how he works it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild.
God is so powerful providentially. He can pull strings and just arrange things so that the most slight things work together. One plants, one waters, and God gives the increase, and people obey the gospel. It's awesome. All right.
Well,
what do you think? Wrap it up?
I think so.
Well, I had one thing real quick, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I was going to say, too, we're trying to make this practical. Find somebody who's good at it.
Yeah.
And not just somebody who's loud, but someone who's actually helping people, and ask them. Just get questions. It's one thing I've started doing the past few years. It has really blessed me. Find Christians who are where you want to be and just talk to them. And they're very giving with their time.
Yeah.
And if they're not, it's probably not coming from a good place anyway.
Yeah.
But like, I know people could reach out to you, right? And that's why they email for the podcast. And when they do that, they're going to talk to one of the two of you. So if you're wanting to get more involved in social media, reach out and ask questions. And you guys can point them to people. I can point them to people. So find someone who's doing well with it and just ask them some questions and learn from it.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are surprised whenever they email, we email back. I had this guy, I was driving somewhere. I was driving to Alabama to go down with you. And I called this guy and I was like, hello. He was like, hello. I was like, hey, is this Justin? He's like, yeah. Who's this? I was like, it's Aaron. He's like, Aaron who? I was like, Aaron Gallagher from Authentic Christian Podcast. He's like, really? I was like, yeah. He's like, you called me? I'm like, yeah, man. Like, you asked me to. I said, I'm sorry it took a little bit. I have a list of people on my phone. Like, I have a note of people like that call, but he like couldn't believe. He's like, man, I've reached out to so many other people and they haven't called me. And I'm like, well, look, I'm not saying I'm perfect and I call everybody, but so we had like really nice conversations. It's like, we say that, we mean it. When you reach out, like you get us, when you send an email to AuthenticChristianPodcast@gmail.com,
yeah,
it comes to us. Now that might not be that great of a thing. I mean, we're just two dudes and three.
Yeah, I mean, like somebody will read
respond.
your message.
Yeah, we
like,
will.
You know, one way or another, eyes will be laid upon it.
Yes,
you know?
and I'll say this: if you emailed and you didn't get a response back, it was an accident. I overlooked it, so email me again. Yeah. Like, don't be afraid to bother me. Like, if I haven't responded to your email, like, I mean, I have a list right now of unread emails that's quite long. That's not because I'm ignoring them. I just haven't had a chance to get through them yet.
Yeah. If you got a real question, or just being goofy or something.
Yeah.
We still might answer back if it's goofy.
I like the goofy ones.
It depends.
Yeah.
You know.
We did an open.
It's not ugly. Right?
We did even though I normally respond to,
sometimes
unless I can tell you don't really want an answer, you just want to like poke. Then I will ignore those.
It actually takes a lot for us to not answer, to be honest.
Yeah. But, one of the things was someone asked if our podcast and the Bible Project podcast, we're going to have a podcast battle. And I was like, no, I don't think so. But that was a silly question, but it made me laugh. So,
Yeah.
Okay. Any closing thoughts? Continue. All right. Yeah. Okay.
No.
Thanks for watching the Authentic Christian Podcast. I'm Aaron. This is Scott. And this is our special guest, Matt Wallen from House to House, Heart to Heart. Thank you for watching with us. We'll see you back on the next episode. Have a great day. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Authentic Christian Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by the Gospel Broadcasting Network, or GBN for short. You can hop on the App Store, search Gospel Broadcasting Network, and you can download the app. And there's this show, many other great shows that you can watch or listen to and start learning more about the Bible and why we're here, what our purpose is. Thanks for listening.